21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Well, the hook is gold in your backyard. You don't have to go everywhere around the world. It's right there. All you have to do is dig deep enough. It was an expression that my father used when I started working with him. He was my mentor, and I was in Southern Illinois, a small community, a small town. I told my dad I'd never make enough money in this small area, and he just said, "Son, there's gold in your backyard." I said, "Well, Dad, I know about coal, and I know about corn, and I know about soybeans, but I never knew in Southern Illinois there was gold, G-O-L-D. And there sure is gold in your backyard. I found it." And what my book is about trying to give you 50 lessons in leadership, life, and the power of a dream, and talk about it's right there in your backyard. That's the big thing. I think people search all over the world and they travel and they're looking for this and they're looking for that and they're looking for opportunities. It's all in your backyard. So in 1971 and 1972, I went to the University of California at Davis to study viticulture and enology, the science of the grape and the science of winemaking. And I came back and I worked for my dad, who had a wine and liquor distributorship. But while I was in California, I always dreamed someday of having my own winery and vineyard in California. And this was my big dream. This is what I wanted. This is what I dreamed about all the time. And that was at age 22. At age 60, after running 7 marathons, I was going to run my 8th marathon. And I had what was called a ventricular tachycardia, where my heart rate just took off on me. And the only way I survived was a defibrillator that shocked me and got my heart back into normal rate. However, the doctor said I would need a heart procedure. And so I was in a hospital on a weekend, Friday, and Monday was the heart procedure. And all I could think about that weekend was dying. That was it. My life was over. I'm 60 years old. I have a wonderful family. I have a wonderful business. What did I not accomplish? What I didn't accomplish was my dream. My dream of having a vineyard and winery in California. And I said to myself, if I survive this heart procedure, I'm going to start looking for a vineyard and winery in California. And that was in 2009. It took me 2 years, but I found a vineyard and winery in Sonoma County, California, outside of the town of Sebastopol in 2011. And I started dreaming about that in 1971. So I call it my 40-year dream. And I think it's important. We all have dreams, but don't wait till you're 60 years old. Don't wait till you're almost on your deathbed. If you have a dream, go for it. Make it happen. No one can tell us what's going to happen tomorrow. No one can promise us tomorrow. And so the message is, it's today. Make it happen today. Of course, it took me 40 years, but I don't want it to take you 40 years. I want you to take that dream and make it happen. In my book, my new book, Gold in Your Backyard, there are 50 lessons. Well, the lessons started in 1972 and they went to 2022. And each year I would come up with something that was very important, a lesson that I learned that it could be in business, it could be in life. And I would record that lesson. Now, my first lesson that I learned in 1972 was to find a mentor. And my mentor was my dad, another gentleman, Julian Vanesky, another gentleman, Frank Ferrez. But I learned how important it is to find a mentor. And so when people ask me, where do I start, Ron? I tell you, you start finding a mentor. And they're out there. They're people that have the experience, that have done what you're, thinking about doing, that are more than happy to help you. So, I would say try to find a mentor. And then the second lesson that I learned, I always felt a little nervous about business because I never received my master's business degree. I never had an MBA degree from any of the colleges. And I thought the only way I was going to learn is to read. And I focused in on reading business books. And I read business books. My goal was to read one a week for 52 weeks in a year. And I probably have read in my life over 3,000 or 4,000 business books. And that was my education. And one of the reasons that I convinced myself that I should be reading is because I knew my competitor was doing their reading. And so I've read so much and have learned so much from the authors and the entrepreneurs and the business people from their books that they've written. And I would take those messages, and inside their book, I would find gold. There was gold inside their book. Let me give you an example. I read a book called The $1 Trillion Coach. And he talked about when you have business meetings, part of the agenda is you go over the highlights. But why do you not have written on that agenda lowlights? And why do you not start with your lowlights? Everybody loves to talk about what's great and all the highlights. And so I took that little nugget, and on our board meetings, on our agenda, we have a section that's called lowlights. And we start with that. And then we go through the highlights. So I could take a little piece of these books. I read about investing from a gentleman named John Bogle, Bogle. He was the one who created all the index funds. Vanguard was the index fund. And he talked about the difference between equity investing in stocks and fixed investing in bonds, in U.S. securities and cash. So you had your equity and fixed. And he had a simple formula that really, if you took your age, and let's say you're 50 years old, he would recommend you had 50% of your assets in equity and 50% in fixed. I happen to be 75 years old. I have 75% of my assets in fixed and 25% in equities. And that has served me well. Now, if I was 25 years old, I would put 75% in equity and 25% in fixed, just the reverse. And so I think learning from him, it taught me how to really think about investing. And that's one of the lessons that I talk about that I've learned from reading a book. So a lot of the lessons in this book are from life experiences that I've had and also from reading books. One of the lessons I learned is as an entrepreneur, we're all going to make mistakes. It's just part of business, mistakes. And one of the suggestions I recommend is when you sit down at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year and you're putting your budget together and you have all these line items of your budget, salary, payroll, expenses, whatever it might be, put a line called mistakes in your budget. And what I would do, or what we did, is we put a $50,000 line that for mistakes. And so every month, it was 4,000 a month, over the year, it's going to be $50,000 of mistakes. And so when we made a mistake and it cost us a lot of money, I didn't lose sleep over it. It's in the budget. It's in the budget. And then if we had a real good year and we only made $30,000 of mistakes, that other 20,000 was all profit. It dropped to the bottom. And so I think that you need to realize that you're going to have a mistake as an entrepreneur. Try not to lose sleep about it. Put it in the budget. Let it happen. It's going to happen. It might be your mistake as owner. It might be a mistake of someone that works for you, but don't really, lose sleep about it, because we're all going to make mistakes as an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, I've learned that if you're on time, we teach this to our team, if you're on time, you're late. And it's so important to realize that the most valuable thing that an individual has is their time, because the time is limited. We don't know how long we're going to be on this earth. And I think to be respectful, you have to be not only on time, but early. And so I think it's important to teach your team that we're going to have a meeting and it's going to start at 10 o'clock. And around 9:45, everybody is there waiting to get the meeting started. And when you find out that you can start these meetings a little earlier, you can finish them a little earlier. People love that when you finish them a little earlier. Now, I had a situation where I taught an MBA class, and I told all the students, they were grad students, they were students that were working, that our class was going to start at 9 o'clock. And if you were late to class without an excuse, you were going to get fired. It was just that simple. It's business. And everybody was on time. And then the third week of class, someone showed up late. And so they came in and I took them out. I shut the door. I went out in the hallway and I asked them, give me your excuse. Why were you, was there an emergency? Something happened? No, I'm just, overslept and I was late. I said to him, you're fired. And he said, well, what do you mean you're fired? I'm fired. I had to take this class to get my credits to graduate. I said, well, you're not going to take my class and you're not going to be here to be in my class because I told you what the rules were and you didn't keep up with them and you're fired. He says, well, I'm going to go talk to the dean. I said, fine. So at the same time, after class, I went to talk to the dean. Of course, the dean, the first thing he said, well, Ron, you can't do that. I said, well, I did. And I set the rules and everybody needs to be on time. And he wasn't, and there was no excuse, and he was fired. And I told the dean, I said, you can either have me teach the rest of the year and stand by me, or, I'm not going to bring him back into my classroom. And so the dean stood by me, and he was fired, the student. And so the next week I go to class, everybody is there 15 minutes early. They're ready to go. And you know what? Instead of the class going from 9 to 12, we usually started at 8:45, and I let them out at 11:45. They were so happy to get out at the same earlier. And so my point is you have to have that culture in your business. If you're on time, you're late. And it's so important in business for entrepreneurs to start their culture. I think another thing that entrepreneurs should really look into is becoming a certified B Corporation. It's using business as a source of good. Now, you've probably heard of Patagonia and Ben and Jerry's, but there's a lot of wonderful B corporations that are smaller corporations that they want to give back. And it took us over 300 days to fill out all the information to get certified. And the one thing I like about it is that we got certified as a B Corporation, our winery, in 2022. And every 3 years, you have to get recertified. And you have to score at least 80 points on this certification. We scored 82. But our goal in 3 years was to increase it by 10%. And our new recertification, we're at 92%. And what that means is continuous improvement. Those are the two words I think that you need to keep in your back of your mind. Every year, how can we do something a little better next year than we did this year? And so it's all about continuous improvement. Our score was 92 points. Everybody was happy. We got recertified. And if you look in California, there's 4,000 wineries in the state of California, 4,000. And I think there's 7 of us that are certified B corporations. And not only does it make you stand out, it's helped us in hiring individuals that want to go to work for a company that they know that it's a certified B. We also get help by consumers who want to purchase goods. Every label of bottled wine that we sell has the logo on there that we are a certified B corporation. We're all about continuous improvement. And I think it's something that every entrepreneur should at least, study out, look at, and kind of think about how to take your company up to the next level. All businesses should have some type of advisory board. I think it's very important to have an advisory board. We have that at the Republic of Tea. We also have it at the winery. And we have independent individuals that serve on our advisory board that are just tremendous help and give us. They all have experience, and they really take us to the next level. So I would highly recommend that you have an advisory board. I want to tell you one story about one of my advisory board members. We were talking about business, and he said, "Ron, there's only 3 keys to business." I said, "What do you mean? There's only 3 keys to being successful in business?" And he says, "Yeah, there's only 3, Ron." And I said, "I need to know what those 3 keys are." And he says, "Well, first of all, there's customer satisfaction. If you can't satisfy your customer, you're not going to be successful in business." Okay, I understand that. And then he said, the second key is employee satisfaction. And he said, if you're not paying your team, and if you're not providing them the benefits and profit sharing and health care and not taking care of your employees, and you don't have employee satisfaction, you're not going to be in business. So you have to have customer satisfaction, you have to have employee satisfaction. And I said, I got to hear what this third key is to successful business. And he said, "Ron, the third key is cash flow." Cash flow. And I got to thinking, unbelievable. I think so many entrepreneurs overlook that cash flow statement. And for our business, every week I get a cash flow statement. And I've had that forever. And I think it's so important for startups. You go out there, you sell, and you get a big order, and now you need some more inventory, and you're waiting on that accounts receivable to come in, and they're just stretching you out as long as you can. And, or they're going to deduct something from their invoice. And you have to have cash flow to be successful. And so that's it. That was his 3 keys. And I agree, customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and cash flow. And so I would recommend at our business, we get a cash flow statement every week, every Wednesday. And I've narrowed my computer reports down to just 3 computer reports. I get the accounts receivable report, I get an inventory report, and I get a cash flow statement. So I know everything that's going on. I can look at the inventory, see what's selling, what's not selling, what we're heavy on, what's out of stock. I can look at that accounts receivable and see who's late, who's behind, who we need to call to get our money. And then I can look at that cash flow statement and see how much money we got in our checking account and are we going to be able to pay all our bills this week. So those are important, those 3 type of computer reports, if you want to put it, for your business. One of the ways that my father taught me running the business, and I think it was because he went through the Depression, and he always wanted to have a business and a life with no debt. No debt. And he himself had no debt. The family had no debt. It took a number of years to get to that position. And so when I bought the Republic of Tea, people asked me how big of a company I wanted to get, what our revenue was going to be. And all I was interested in was how quick could I pay off the debt that I owed the bank. And it took me 6 years, 3 months, and 15 days, and I became debt-free. And that was in the year 2000. Well, it's 2025, and we've grown our business for 25 years debt-free. But thinking of a goal of debt-free helps you reach your dream. When I became debt-free, I could put some of that money aside. And when I wanted to buy a winery, I had some resources to accomplish my dream. So I think if you could just think about being debt-free and taking a little of that profit and putting it aside for your dream, that's how you're going to get there, And it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, it will take time. But I think trying to have a debt-free life, and for your family and for your business, gives you the opportunity to reach your dream. And so that's where I would start. If you want to find out more of these lessons, I have 50 good ones for you. I've spoken about a few of them, but there are many more lessons, personal lessons that I have, lessons from all the way from getting public relations, how important that is, strategic planning, how important that is, getting a manicure, how important that is, staying focused, and, learning CPR where you could save lives. And so I think there are so many lessons that I really want to share with everyone. It took me 50 years to write them all up and to have them available, but I think you'll really like it. And of course, that gold is right there in your backyard. And I think you're going to find gold in my book. It's right there in front of you.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community elevate your perspective and embark on the path to success.